Why do most people see themselves as the hero of their own story, even when others might see them as the villain? Welcome to today's episode. Let's start with a strange pattern in storytelling and in real life. In many movies, a terrible character suddenly changes. A villain realizes their mistakes, feels guilt, and becomes good at the last moment. It's a powerful scene. People love it. But when you look at human behavior more closely, something interesting appears. That kind of transformation is actually rare. There is another pattern that seems much closer to reality. A good person slowly becomes something else, not overnight, not with a dramatic moment, just gradually, and often without noticing. Why does that happen? To understand this, we need to look at something the human brain does constantly. It tells stories, not just stories about the world, stories about us. Your brain is always building a narrative where you are the main character. And in that narrative, you usually play a certain role, the hero, not the villain. This is where things get interesting, because the brain doesn't like thinking of itself as bad. If a person suddenly thought, "I'm a terrible person," that thought would clash with their identity, with their sense of self. So the mind does something clever. It rewrites the story. Instead of saying, "I did something wrong," the mind says things like, "I had no choice. They started it. Anyone would have done the same. It wasn't really that bad." In psychology, this kind of mental process is often described as self-justification. The brain protects the story where you remain the good guy. And once that story exists, something subtle begins to happen. Moral drift. Imagine someone making a small compromise. Just a tiny one. A small lie. A small selfish decision. A moment of pride. Nothing dramatic. But the brain immediately explains it. It's fine. Then another small step happens. And another. People rarely jump off a moral cliff. They usually walk toward it, millimeter by millimeter. That's why many ancient tragedies follow a very familiar pattern. A wise person gains success. Success turns into confidence. Confidence slowly turns into pride. Pride becomes blindness. And blindness leads to a mistake. Then comes the fall. Interestingly, the fall is usually not caused by an enemy. It's caused by something inside the character, their own arrogance. This pattern appears again and again in human stories, and maybe in real life too, because gaining wisdom or goodness often requires effort, patience, self-control, empathy. In a way, it's like climbing a mountain, slow, hard. Every step requires attention, but moving in the other direction is much easier. All it takes is one moment of slipping. That might explain why stories about villains becoming good feel so powerful. They offer hope. The hope that no matter how far someone has fallen, redemption is still possible. Maybe that hope is something humans need. But there's another strange twist here. Many of the biggest tragedies in history might not come from people who believed they were evil. They came from people who believed they were right. People who were absolutely convinced they were doing the correct thing. Think about that for a moment. If someone knows they're doing something bad, they might hesitate. But if someone believes they are righteous, if they believe they are defending truth or justice, then limits can disappear. The mind says, the goal is good, so the method must be justified. That belief can become extremely powerful and extremely dangerous, which leads to a strange paradox about human character. Sometimes the most dangerous person is not the one who knows they are flawed. It's the one who is completely certain they are not. Interestingly, truly thoughtful people often show the opposite behavior. They question themselves. They ask uncomfortable questions. Did I do the right thing? Could I be wrong? Am I missing something? That small crack of doubt might actually be a protective mechanism, a way to keep pride from quietly taking over. Because once someone becomes completely convinced of their own righteousness, the story becomes locked. And when the story locks, learning stops. So maybe the most realistic human story isn't about a villain suddenly turning good. Maybe it's about something quieter, a decent person slowly drifting, believing they are still the hero the entire time. And perhaps the real challenge of being human is noticing that drift, catching it early, before the story in our head becomes too comfortable to question. So here's a final thought to sit with. What if the difference between wisdom and tragedy isn't intelligence, or strength, or even morality? What if it's simply this question? What if I'm wrong? And maybe the people who can honestly ask that question are the ones most likely to remain the heroes of their story.